In this video, I'm going to give you a framework and some useful tools for getting somebody in your life to go vegan. This isn't about tricking anybody or forcing anybody, and I'm not here to tell you that I have a foolproof system for getting people to go vegan 100% of the time. I don't. What I do have is a well-established framework for behaviour change and several evidence-based tools that I've acquired over a decade as a researcher of meat reduction. This video is mostly based on my 2022 paper titled Going Veggie: Identifying and Overcoming the Psychological and Social Barriers to Veganism. We use a framework called the Stages of Change model, which has been used with great success to treat alcoholism, smoking addiction, and other habitual individual behaviours. The model views this kind of behaviour change as a years-long process during which an individual grows in their conviction and their capability to practice some new positive behaviour. Let's take a look at the model overall, and then we'll look in more detail at each stage. The model has 5 stages. The first stage is called pre-contemplation. In this stage, the individual has not yet thought about changing the behaviour. For meat consumption, our survey data shows that this is the most common stage that individuals are at. The second stage is contemplation. In this stage, the individual actually thinks about changing the behaviour seriously, and they'll often experience a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of motivated reasoning, and generally a lot of resistance to change, where people want to just go back to not thinking about it. This is the trickiest stage to navigate, and we're going to talk about how to handle that. The third stage is preparation. At this stage, the person has actually made the decision to change the behaviour, and they intend to make the change sometime in the next 6 months. They might have taken some steps, like trying different meat alternatives or planning out meat-free meals. The fourth stage is action. At this stage, the individual has actually taken action, they've made the change, and they have now given up the behaviour, in this case eating meat. The fifth and final stage is maintenance. Individuals at this stage are basically long-term adherents of the new behaviour. They've given up the old behaviour more than 6 months ago, and they now find it increasingly easy and habitual to maintain the new behaviour. The idea that it's a bit of a pain to be vegan is only really true at the start. After about 6 months, you've navigated what you're going to buy in the supermarket, it becomes pretty easy. So these are the 5 stages of change. Our survey data from the UK shows that 49% of people are in the pre-contemplation stage, 30% are in the contemplation stage, 6% in the preparation stage, 3% in action, and 12% in the maintenance stage. In other words, roughly half have not seriously considered eating less meat, around about 30% are considering it currently, and around about 20% have already given up meat, or they've decided that they're going to give up meat soon. This is a useful framework to have because when you're interacting with one individual, it's good to think about what stage they're at and what progress might actually look like for them. If somebody is way back here at the pre-contemplation stage, then for them, a conversation might be progress. Even if they appear to disagree with you, at least now they're thinking about it and they weren't before. That's still progress, even if they didn't go vegan overnight. Also, once you understand which stage a person is at, you can start to locate the right tools to move them along to the next stage. The pre-contemplation stage is the most common stage that people are at with respect to veganism. Our UK survey data shows that around 49% have never seriously considered giving up meat. The good news is that some proportion of that 49% only need to be prompted to consider it, and they'll get to veganism pretty quickly. For most people, however, that's not going to be the case. It'll be a bit more of a journey. But whether they're low-hanging fruit or the most stubborn meathead, everyone needs to be prompted to think about it first. Some people will experience cognitive dissonance, they'll push back, that's true, and we'll look at how to deal with that, but they won't even get that far if they don't think about it first. In general, the animal movement needs a lot of wide-reaching media to prompt this 49% to think about the reasons why they might think about giving up meat. We need billboards, TV, radio ads, online outreach, all of this stuff. The goal should be to get them thinking about it and to prompt further investigation. This is the goal on an individual level too. You want them to think about it and think about the reasons why they might give up meat. Recommending documentaries is a great way of doing this. Other media like books and podcasts can also be useful, but documentaries really are the best. Common ones that are recommended include Dominion and Earthlings. If you're in the UK, I recommend Earthling Ed's documentary, Land of Hope and Glory. You can find a link to that in the description. If it's books that they're into, Jonathan Safran Foer's Eating Animals is said to be a very compelling one for people who have yet to seriously think about eating less meat. In terms of conversation, the best approach at this stage could be kind of did you know? Joey Carbstrong is fond of using this stat that over 90% of pigs in the UK are killed in gas chambers, and I think that's a good one to get people thinking. The goal is to get them thinking about it further. Most people are not going to go vegan right away. At this stage, progress looks like getting them to agree to watch a documentary or read a book, and then following up on that agreement to make sure that they do it and spend more time thinking about the issue. That's what happens in the contemplation stage. The contemplation stage really is the big one. It's when somebody seriously sits down and thinks about whether they're going to give up meat. This almost never happens in a live conversation. Most people are not walking around with a detailed idea and moral argument for why they think it's justified to eat meat. In reality, eating meat is the default. Most people grew up eating meat, and most of those people just haven't given it much thought. So when they are prompted to think about it, it would be perfectly reasonable to say, well, that's an interesting question. I've never really given it much thought. But that's not what happens. Instead, people usually imagine that they must have a good reason for eating meat, especially when you're presenting so many compelling reasons not to eat meat, in terms of animal abuse on factory farms, the overwhelming scientific evidence that we need to eat less meat for the purpose of the planet, the overwhelming scientific evidence that red meat gives us heart disease and that processed meat gives us cancer. They think, surely there must be a good reason why we're doing this, right? This is motivated reasoning. You start with the conclusion that you know you have to reach, in this case that it's okay to eat meat, and then you work backwards to make up premises that are going to allow you to get there. Research has shown that over 90% of meat eaters justify eating meat with reference to one or more of the 4 N's. That eating meat is natural, normal, necessary, and nice. Of these 4 common justifications, necessary is just inaccurate, it's clearly not necessary for humans to eat meat, and while normal, natural, and nice might be accurate in some sense, they're just not good reasons to do factory farming. If you're a good cook, or you have access to good vegan food, you can address the nice objection by showing them that they can have perfectly nice vegan food, and that they don't have to sacrifice anything by giving up meat. If you can successfully show that there's no sacrifice, then they're going to lose the motivation behind the motivated reasoning. If you want to go down the route of arguing with someone, I recommend that it's a good idea to frame the conversation as not being about them personally. I'll sometimes say to somebody, let's not talk about your meat consumption here, let's talk about somebody else consuming factory farmed meat. And sometimes that allows them the distance to be a little bit more objective. The most effective tool I've come across for having the debate itself is called Name the Trait. This has been made famous here on YouTube by this guy called Ask Yourself. You can go and find his content in the description or by searching on YouTube. Name the Trait is basically a conversational tool that gets people to think more deeply about the reasons why they really think it's okay to eat animals. And sometimes they'll realise that they actually don't have a good reason to think that. Even in the case where you do debate someone, and even in the case where they do go on to change their mind, it usually won't happen in the moment. The contemplation stage doesn't happen during live conversations. It happens afterwards when you're thinking about it in the shower or in bed at night. The danger for somebody at the contemplation stage is that they'll just stop thinking about it. So for somebody at this stage who's meant to be engaging with the idea, who's promised that they're going to watch your documentary, a useful thing to do can be to tag them in relevant content in social media just to remind them of the idea. At the end of the day, you can't force somebody to change their mind. All you can do is keep reminding them and eventually hope that they come to see your way of things. Once a person does decide that they want to give up meat, they move to the preparation stage. At this stage, the person is still eating meat, but they might have taken some steps towards reducing meat or experimenting with meat substitutes, and they intend to give up meat within the next few months. So at this stage, the decision is made, they are preparing to give up meat, and they no longer need to be convinced. At this stage, we need to go from telling that person why they should give up meat to telling them how to give up meat. So here we're getting into things like sharing vegan recipes, swap guides, maybe going food shopping together, planning meals together and cooking together. These are all really great examples of things that you can do to help someone during the preparation stage. It's really important to be inviting and encouraging during the preparation stage. You want to make this seem like an achievable goal and an inviting community to be a part of. That means being very supportive of the person's decision to give up meat and not berating them for slip-ups and imperfections early on. Temporary challenges like Veganuary or 30-day vegan are a great tool for somebody at the preparation stage. They already have a good level of commitment to give it a go for this long, and a good number of those people will end up just sticking with it at the end of the 30 days and transition right into the action stage. In the action stage, the person has taken a definitive action and they've given up meat. This is generally the biggest step in terms of the psychological and social change. And new vegans in this stage might feel kind of like they're pretending. It might feel a bit weird to call themselves vegan at first. Now, people in this stage who are newly vegetarian or vegan are likely getting a lot of pushback from different people in their lives. Maybe their friends or family are making fun of their new decision. And that makes it really important for vegans to be supportive and encouraging about their decision to give up meat. I'll often tell new vegetarians or vegans, congratulations, or good for you. It's also a good idea to invite new vegetarians or vegans into vegetarian or vegan social groups, either in real life or online. Having that social support in your life or on your social media feed can be the difference between a new vegan sticking with it or sacking it off after a couple of months. Aside from support and affirmation of their new identity via social groups, there are two really important tools that you can use at this stage. The first tool is emergency planning. You basically want to plan for two types of situations where relapsing and eating meat is most likely to occur. That's high stress situations and high fun situations. You know that you have a tough day at work this week and you're going to be tempted by your favourite takeaway order. Make sure to research ahead of time the most gluttonous vegan takeaway you can find. Going to a barbecue this weekend with a bunch of meat-eating friends? Make sure that you have the best vegan burgers you can get so that you don't feel jealous when you have crappy food in comparison. This type of emergency planning can be game-changing. Literally, take down a piece of paper, write down a few high-stress and high-fun situations that you're likely to encounter, and make a plan for how you'll deal with them. The next tool for new vegetarians and vegans is called the Food Tea app. This app can program your brain to respond to healthy foods like fruits and vegetables, and not respond to unhealthy foods like meat and dairy. It does this via a simple game where you have to tap healthy foods that show up in green circles and not tap unhealthy foods that show up in red circles. Studies have shown that playing this game for just a few minutes a day can significantly reduce meat cravings in just a couple of weeks. And the app is free, by the way. After about 6 months in the action phase, the strangeness of one's new identity and the cravings for meat or dairy products start to wear off, and the person moves on to the maintenance stage. The maintenance stage usually refers to someone who's changed their behaviour at least 6 months ago, and at this stage people become much less likely to relapse and start the behaviour again. In veganism, after 6 months somebody has shown themselves that they are able to stick to a vegan diet and be healthy, so their self-belief starts to grow and their conviction starts to grow that they're doing the right thing. For people in the maintenance stage, social groups remain really important, including online and IRL. It's difficult to overstate the importance of vegans being networked with other vegans. We need to exist outside the vegan bubble as well, but if you are the only vegan you know, that's a tough life. Being in social groups together also makes vegans more likely to become active. The difference between a vegan and an activist is much greater than the difference between a vegan and a meat eater. Even people who have been vegan for many years shouldn't rest on their laurels. There's so much more that you can do to help animals, and you're more likely to do that if you're in groups with other people who care about the same things. If you want to know more about what those things are, you can watch my video Upgrade to Vegan 2.0, and if you want to join a supportive community, head on over to dsc.gg/ChrisBryantPhD. So, let's summarise what we've talked about here. Getting someone to go vegan is best viewed as a series of 5 stages, and there are tools that you can use at each stage. At the pre-contemplation stage, it's about bringing the issue to their attention, getting them to talk about it, and recommending documentaries, books, and other resources to get them to think about it further. At the contemplation stage, those documentaries, books, and conversations continue to be a useful resource. You can also tag them in relevant content on social media to keep it in their minds, and show them good vegan food to show them that it doesn't need to be a sacrifice. At the preparation stage, you switch from telling them why to showing them how. Being supportive, doing activities like cooking and shopping together, and inviting them to take part in temporary vegan challenges are all useful tools at this stage. At the action stage, that social support is paramount because new vegetarians and vegans will be experiencing some social resistance. Emergency planning can help them to deal with challenging situations, and the Food Tea app can help reduce animal product cravings. And in the maintenance stage, social groups are a paramount tool to keep long-term vegetarians and vegans networked and engaged and doing more for animals. Each person is on their own journey here, somewhere along this process. Your job is to work out what stage they're at and then do what you can to help them reflect on, plan for, or embrace eating less meat. I hope this video was a useful tool to help you do that. Please give it a like, subscribe, and share this video with a vegan who's on a mission to make a difference. This is Chris Bryant, PhD. Cheers.